We have a very special edition in the last days of our campaign cycle here with the Transhumanist Party presidential primary. And I'm here with my friend and a fellow campaigner, John Kerecz. And we're going to talk about some of the most important issues of our day, the climate crisis and the futurist ecology ideas of this kind. And maybe dish a little bit about what's going on with the campaign and how we're doing with all of this. It's good to see you, John. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling okay today. I actually had a little bit of a headache earlier, but it's gotten better. So, sometimes the beginning of the weeks are rough. You get back to the grind. I work somewhere every day, so it's still a grind, But you've been busy yourself with the campaign now, haven't you?
Yep. A pretty busy day. I have another event after this with the longevity group up in Scottsdale on Zoom. Another call. I'm looking forward to that, but kind of had some technical issues today, so going around with like a chicken with my head cut off. So I apologize for if my appearance is a little wild looking at the moment.
Well, like you said, you are in Phoenix, and I've been there already when it's 115 degrees. So if you look a little bit hot, it's Phoenix,
Yeah. Not passing out from sunstroke is a win. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about the climate crisis. We don't have people in our organization who are out and out climate deniers, but we have some people who've entered this race who definitely kind of fit the bill as people who would tend to be doing that. People who are skeptical of things of which I'm inclined to think they should not be skeptical. You're not one of those folks. I have a lot of admiration for your platform and the work you do. For our listeners, give us a little refresher about your views on the climate crisis and futurist ecology.
Well, presently I do work in the field of alternate energy and work with solar and wind technology and electric cars, and I work a lot with energy assurance myself, which is if there is catastrophes, how do you make sure people have power? We always joke that that's making sure Granny doesn't freeze during the wintertime. But it's all very important stuff, and people like to sometimes deny what's going on with the environment and deny that man is responsible. And it's just that kind of is hard to me to believe that when you see what we do. I mean, you can see the dirt we put out. You can see the animals getting even caught in our trash, and the fact that they're trying to now get rid of even straws because of the animals getting straws stuck in their noses and everything. And it's just phenomenal what we do. But that's kind of what man does. You know what I mean? I hate to say it. I think earlier today, Charles put something out about those was Earth Guardians. It's an interesting website that I looked up. I recommend everybody look that up. Good groups all over the country and the world to get involved with and to get children involved. But you can't sometimes I think people like to stick their head in the sand and kind of be in a vacuum. And I know some people also said with the campaigns about, well, what is stressing the environment really have to do with being transhuman? And the thing to me is, if we're worried about extending our life, what does it matter if we live long if our world's destroyed? I myself don't want to live forever, but live in a bubble where I can't do anything or not be able to go outside because there's no fresh air. I want to be able to enjoy the earth itself. And so I think the two go hand in hand, taking care of our environment and extending our lives. I think both policies and both concepts work together. So that's kind of where I come from, all of that. And I've seen if things have changed my life. I've been around almost 60 years, and I've seen how things have gotten worse and more polluted. There's more trash laying around than there ever was. Now cities have gotten bigger, and it's just we just have to try and take better care of our world so that it's here for us and the future generations.
Very nice. Yes. Last 2 nights past, I had a wonderful conversation with a woman, an H+ organizer in Holland, Amanda Stoll, and she has an incredible reputation in some of these areas. And she was talking a little bit about an initiative that she worked on for a little while with thorium energy. We were talking about some alternative energy sources. Also, in the course of that conversation, we talked a little bit about the functionality of the space elevator prospectus that I worked on with the Russian team, Dmitry Iskov, principally. And the reason that I bring that up in the context of this energy singularity notion is that we could be ultimately building a solar arrays in orbit that could be doing an awful lot more to generate power. And this notion of an energy singularity is one that would change civilization incredibly. And I think that this can be done in a green way. Do you think that these ideas are compatible, an energy singularity and the greening of our human world?
Oh yes, quite compatible. I think solar and space would be great. You're not interfered with by the atmosphere, so you get a lot more energy that way. I also am a supporter of nuclear. I don't disagree with nuclear, although there are more types of nuclear reactors than the kind we use presently. I was told, we were just talking about this, I was talking to a military person, I think it was last week, about that, and he said, well, the way we do nuclear reactors like right now on purpose is to make radioactive waste that can be used for weapons. That is part of the planning. The military kind of planned it that way, where they wanted the byproducts to be functional for weapons. So if we stop thinking in that direction, we could probably make better nuclear plants also. I mean, nuclear plants, some of the things I used to work for EPA monitoring TMI, as a matter of fact, after the accident, 3 Mile Island. And one of the facts people don't realize is that coal burning plants, on the average, put out more radiation than a properly functioning nuclear plant. Because of the radioactive isotopes in coal, when you burn them, it goes up in the air. And people don't realize that. They don't realize that a coal burning plant puts out radiation. So there's a lot of stuff that people don't realize about the power that they think was safe. You know what I mean? There's problems with that too. But yeah, putting solar in space would be great. And you talked about working on the space elevator project. That's interesting to me too. I did know, if you remember, back in 2014, I flew up to the edge of space in a MiG-29 over in Russia. It was quite interesting. The whole experience of being in Russia and doing it in Russia was interesting. And people say, why do you go to Russia to do it? Because in this country, they won't let you do it. They'd be afraid you'd sue them if something went wrong, But that the Russians are very interesting, and it's interesting to me how some of their approaches are different. I mean, that MiG-29 is, 1977 technology, but it still worked. So there's things out there that we're not using that we could be using also. That's the point I'm getting at with that.
And you mentioned a little bit the historical nuclear event at 3 Mile Island. I know that you mentioned, I believe, or I know that you are from this area, Harrisburg, which is just a few miles from where that occurred. Right now in Japan, there's one of the ministers in Japan, a son of a earlier prime minister, is campaigning in the wake of the Fukushima some years past, but is campaigning to remove this existing nuclear infrastructure that they have. Now, it brings to mind a more specific question about nuclear energy. Most transhumanists are pro nuclear energy and that we support the existing infrastructure. Do you think that nuclear energy should be developed further, or do you think that we should just keep the existing infrastructure, maybe try some other kinds that you mentioned of nuclear reactors, or should we focus more on these distinctly green, distinctly renewable in other ways?
I think it would be best if we try and work on the green technologies, but I mean, I'm not putting anything out of mind at the present. I mean, especially when we progress to other planets and stuff, some of the nuclear might be beneficial in certain circumstances. I'm not sure if we put stuff on the dark side of the moon or something, but the dark side of the moon isn't always dark. They get some sunlight there too, depending where the moon's at. But there probably is a use for it, and there's probably a way for us to improve that technology also.
Mm,
I mean,
very
even
nice.
I have to admit, I have purchased an electric, a hybrid car, but I also have a regular car that gets 45.7 miles to a gallon, and it's not a little car; it's a four-door car. So even our regular technology today is better than it was in the past. So my point is that technology could be improved upon also.
Mm, very nice. And in the Futurist New Deal, we have one or two points of the main platform points it refers to, or it echoes some of the points on the Green New Deal. Now, people have heard me talk about the Futurist New Deal quite a lot. They can refer back to other podcasts about that. But let's talk about your views. Is there anything in the Green New Deal that you like, energy-wise? Are there things that you want to expand upon, want to maybe jettison in favor of something else?
Well,
And we could talk about the labor aspects of it as well, if you like.
yeah, I do. I do like the new Green Deal, and if you saw what I had posted, I think it was last week. It's very similar to new Green Deal. The only thing that I specified that I kind of deviated from is I'm willing to tax fossil fuels and believe in putting tariffs on it and taxes on it and trades on it, because I think that also deters people from using them, and it also is a way of making additional income. Because if people, at least if they're still using it, they're going to be helping paying the system that's helping cleaning it up at the same time. So basically, that's the main place I deviate from the regular Democrats' new Green Deal. I do agree with most of it, and also the idea of them making more jobs through infrastructure. I was in a meeting a couple weeks ago now, maybe even a month ago now, where we talk about building green buildings, because that's part of my job of what we look into. And surprisingly, we're having a hard time getting people that actually want to build the green buildings, actual builders, people doing the work. And we also, when I talked earlier about energy assurance, a lot of what you have to do is get fuel to people when there's emergency. Say there's a snowstorm, you have to get fuel to people. We're having a shortage of people that even want to drive trucks to take fossil fuels even to people, or even haul natural gas to people, or propane. So it's interesting to me that there is a desire for workers and people don't want to take the jobs. So that kind of interests me. And I did joke, I have to admit that I joked that Trump's building a wall, but the Mexicans would come up and they do those jobs. So I kind of joked about that. But so there are jobs being made, and people don't necessarily want to work them. So there is jobs there that people are going to be able to work. I think sometimes I look at the job aspects. I think I'm kind of going around in a circle here a little bit, but I always talk about how our country was mostly farming for a long time. And then we became industrial. But actually, we were only industrial for a short amount of time. I mean, what is it? Maybe 100 years, maybe a little over 100 years at the most. It really hasn't been that long. But for the first couple hundred years, we were farmers. We grew things. We weren't industrials. We didn't have big factories like crazy. And now we're shifting in a different direction. And people want to go back to the industrial years, but it's almost like if everybody during the industrial years wanted to go back to the farming years. And people just have to move forward. There's going to be jobs. Jobs are going to be created by new technology. They're going to be different kind of jobs. Even if some of our jobs are automated, there's going to be other jobs that are better suited for human beings than a person doing something a machine could do. I mean, right now machines can't do everything we can do, but there are things they can do, and they can do it better. So let the machines do that, and let the people do what they excel at.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry, please go.
Well, that's just it. But as far as how I deviate from the new Green Deal, I also believe in putting backing into education some more. I talked about a UBI. I talked about revamping possibly our welfare and our Social Security to help work that into what controls the UBI. And also some education. I do want the arts backed. I don't want just I want all arts back, music, art, all types of art. It's important. I think it's important for us as humans to expand us, what makes us different than the animals and some of the machines of today. I also I also looked at the possibility, the idea of a guaranteed 2-year associate degree, college degree, or a technical degree. And that's important too, as technology changes and our workforce changes in the jobs. You want people to be able to be re-educated for that. So that I also think is important. So that's basically kind of where I deviate. I'm a little bit more on the education parts, a little more on the education parts, the UBI, and also I'm not afraid to do the taxation of the fossil fuels, because I think we do have to make the money somewhere. And I think if we don't want people to be using fossil fuels, and if we want them to try and go to renewables and green energy, I think that's a deterrent, and it's also a way of making money. So that's kind of where I'm deviating there.
Yeah, and we've had the knowledge of how destructive this fossil fuel run economy is, and that knowledge has been suppressed. And we've had campaigns of propaganda to and campaigns of other kinds to keep us from truly acknowledging that. Now it has reached a crisis point on many dimensions. And we need to be doing more. I think Steele might have brought this up with you. There was a young man who was at the longevity conference and Transhumanist handbook signing. A clever young man, Daniel Yeluashvili.
Yes, I talked with him. Yes.
Yes. And he has done this presentation on geoengineering. Do you think that these kind of measures, beyond the things that are in the scope of the Green New Deal, do you think that these kind of more novel, substantive, in some way very substantial civil engineering type projects should be undertaken to combat climate change? Do you have any other more speculative kinds of projects of those kinds that you would like to be doing?
Well, I think it's a good idea to try things. I mean, some of the things I know that they talked about was actually seeding the clouds to reflect the light and the heat to try and do some cooling. Some of the fears are that if they show they can do that and control the climate, that people want to keep wanting to pollute and saying it's being controlled that way. So some people are a little scared of trying that technology. I think that the problem is a combination of things, and I think the solution is probably going to be a combination of things. I think to meet goals in certain amounts of time, we might have to do a little bit more than we thought. We might have to also occasionally seed the clouds a little bit more, be more reflective, to cool the temperatures in certain areas. It's probably going to be, shall we say, a holistic approach. We're going to have to do a whole bunch of different things at once. We're not just going to be able to do one thing and ignore other things. So I do think a lot of those technologies and approaches are good. I had another thought which left my brain. That's one good thing about getting older. You write notes, but still you forget things. But yes, I there's a lot of different approaches I think that are good. And I enjoyed very much talking with him. Him, and Steele had a chat. I believe you can still see on Detonation. Very interesting and very informative. I agree with that. There's a lot of things out there to try. The bad thing is that if you try some of those things, it might make some of the polluters feel like they can be off the hook more. I mean, there's a lot of other things affects. We affect, I liked Daniel's idea of basically, I always knew it as eutrophication. It's where lakes or body of water get extra iron and stuff, and then the plant goes crazy. And they grow like wild, and that's a form of that happens from pollution. But he had the idea of purposely doing that so the plants would grow and then help, take more carbon and ingest more carbon and put out more oxygen. So that was an interesting idea. I kind of enjoyed that. One of my first research papers I did when I was getting my environmental engineering degree was on eutrophication. So I like the idea of using it for good instead of it being a sign of something bad, So it's interesting how something that could have been thought of as a bad thing could be used to help clean up something else. So I very much did enjoy that. Now with, your ideas. What are some of your ideas? I might as well ask you too, since how are some of your ideas? What do you think are good ideas to help clean up the climate and the pollution we have right now?
Yes. Well, I'm actually an admirer of your platform, and I do agree that with this idea of a balance between disincentivizing the use of fossil fuels and in the measures that are described in the some of the measures that are described in the Green New Deal and also described in my Futurist New Deal. And I also like some of this focus on more novel approaches, the geoengineering approaches that we are describing. We definitely have we have to address these things to some degree. I haven't been messaging on a climate as much for the same reason I haven't been messaging on a public health service in so direct a way, because Democrats are doing a pretty good job fleshing that out. I'm trying to stay to the e-governance and economic policy matters, even though I do not care to downplay those other concerns. The climate crisis is a very real crisis, and in thinking. Please
no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was going to ask another question, but you had a follow-up question.
Oh yeah, I was just going to say about the healthcare. I think some people don't realize you talk about extending life and stuff with transhumanism and stuff, and trying to live forever as long as possible, and that to me very much is a healthcare issue. I mean, because I hear some people say, well, we don't want to just be about healthcare, but if one of our main purposes is extending life, that is healthcare. We don't want just people living. You don't want to just have people live forever. You want them to enjoy their life. You want it to be a quality life. That's why I always say about the environment's important too, because to me, being able to go outside and see the trees and see the sky and enjoy the water, that's quality of life to me. So that's why I think, the healthcare is longevity and the environment is our quality of life. It helps with our quality of life. I talked about going to space. You talked about the space elevator. I do hope sometimes that our colonization of other planets helps alleviate our stress on this planet. Sometimes my fear is that the human race might become sort of like, I don't know what think of them as termites, and they destroy whatever was behind them and just moving out. I worry about that sometimes. But I would hope that as we can go to other planets, that we use our explorer drive that's within us to expand out, and we kind of, through that, we can kind of keep the Earth nicer. I would hope. Of course, like I said, I hope we just don't destroy everything in our path and just keep moving outward. But I'm hopeful that, and I've said this the other night too about the space program. I'm a big supporter of the space program. I do like that we're doing the Space Force, although I think it's for the wrong reason. I like the fact we're doing it. We're doing it for military reasons, and sometimes the right things are done for the wrong reasons. I hate to say it. The original reason we went to the moon was to show Russia we could do it before they did it. So we're going out there first to watch. But it's getting us out there. And I think along with that, it's going to help us. I mean, some of the things that I've pushed, I go out and go to Capitol Hill and push some of the initiatives, like with the National Space Agent Organization and the Planetary Society and stuff. And some of the things we push is space commerce, colonization, some other research to protect our planet, to watch from asteroids and stuff in space. But a lot of it is about space commerce also, the mining of asteroids and stuff. And me and Kimberly had talked about that. What does it do for gold in our economy, though, if we find an asteroid that's all full of gold? I mean, let's face it, the gold rates have been controlled by certain families in this country, in this world for a long time anyhow. So it's kind of like they play numbers with that anyhow. So, but I think it's going to open up a lot of things, and I hope it opens up us taking care of our planet more also. But along with that, as we go to space, as when we went to space before, I think there's going to be a lot of technologies that are discovered and researched not only for the flight, but also for health, that are going to interact and help us also with longevity. I think when they're dealing with issues we have in space where gravity is changing, there is no gravity, our blood's going all kinds of places because there is no gravity, I think when they work on that, it's going to be other things that help us with our longevity and our health here on the Earth as it is. So I think there's going to be a lot of side benefits that people aren't seeing right now.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting parallel to the trajectory of the NASA space program in the 20th century, developing so many offshoots from that are basically the things that are allowing us to have this conversation right now.
Exactly.
All derived from those incubators. We could do the same thing with bioengineering for public health. Yeah, that's an interesting observation.
Exactly, and a lot of people don't think about that. They're like, "Why do we want to do this?" Well, there's a lot of side things that came out of it. I mean, other than Tang, it wasn't just Tang that came out of it. So there were a lot of things that came out people didn't realize. So that I think there's a lot of things that are going to come out of it that people don't realize now. And it's great that someone like Elon Musk is pushing things. It's great that he's pushing, as long as he's pushing, and I think it's great that there's other men, of course, out there pushing. There's what's that one, blue something, and there's the people that run Google have one, and Amazon have their own space programs that they're pushing. So that's great. I think eventually there's probably going to be one or two that come out above others, but right now it's great that there's a couple in the race along with governments.
Mm-hmm. At the top of this talk, you mentioned how people sometimes have a certain knee-jerk cognitive dissonance at the notion of the juxtaposition of green philosophy and techno-futurist philosophy. They see those things as, well, those things are not immediately associated in my mind. Why are we talking about them in the same breath? Now, I want to bring that to something we mentioned in the context of Daniel Yeluashvili and the geoengineering again. How much do you think people's ideas, certain kinds of aesthetic ideas, or maybe a certain kind of some kind of appeal to some naturalistic fallacy or let's say a naturalistic sentiment, or aesthetic sentiments, how much do you think that prevents us from maybe fixing problems? We can imagine even going back into the 20th century, any number of initiatives might have gained a lot of popularity, except people, there was almost this sort of uncanny valley associations even at that time with certain kinds of things seeming unnatural, seeming over the top, seeming too space age. How do you weigh all of that?
I kind of agree with that. I think man is, we bring up tribalism, but I think man is very resistant to very high amounts of change. I think, I remember, in the 60s, we thought we'd be in flying cars. We thought we'd be building houses mostly underground because it would be better for the ecology. There was all kinds of crazy things how we thought we'd be living now. And I find that if you look at man, we like changes, but we like them to look as much like it's looked before. Even our buildings. If you look at houses, they're really not that different than they were. You go to Williamsburg, Virginia, right? They got all those old colonial houses. But now, are those colonial houses really that different than if you go to Savannah, or you go to New Orleans, or you go to other parts of other countries even? Even though we can build all kinds of new technology, we're very resistant. We kind of want to stay in our groove. We're scared of it. Even cars. We're building electric cars and stuff, but if you notice, our electric cars look more like our other cars. They don't look too different. Once we got into the car mode, and the first cars we had looked not too different than the buggies that we had horses pull. So it kind of has to ease away. And I think I joked about it the other night too. I joked about how when we went from horse and buggies to cars, people didn't kind of like that at first. They thought that was ridiculous. But eventually it wears on people. But I think the big thing with technologies and everything is, I brought up Steve Jobs before. You kind of have to, he was kind of great for making people realize they needed things they didn't know they needed. And somehow things have to be, and I said this about the media, sometimes the media is important in that to make people realize that they need some things they don't realize they need, or they're not bad, or they're good, and sometimes it's funny, but crowds also seem to follow famous people. You know, if I don't know who your favorite athlete is, your favorite actress or actor, but if there's an actor, you know that he that thing's weird, but he likes it. If he must like it, it must be okay. It's funny how people go with that, but I do think people are resistant to change, and they would prefer change appear. Somehow you have to try and make changes seem gradual, even if they're not. I mean, I think cell phones have changed fairly fast, but you know, once people started putting something into their heads in the '80s, those big clunky things that were around in the '80s, I think they wanted them to get smaller. So it was a progression that I think we accepted, and the usability was accepted. So if you show the usability and the effects also, I think that helps. If people see the reaction, it's good. But I do think that people are basically resistant to change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that broad multifunctionality, it is the big selling point of these kind of devices. And you know, in thinking about that, in thinking about augmented reality, an interesting thing about augmented reality devices is that broad multifunctionality can become effectively interface free. If you have an augmented reality headset, you don't need to build as many buttons into things because you can be interacting at the augmented reality becomes the interface. So, but it's interesting to see how people haven't really moved towards augmented reality in the way that they could have. You know, there was a staunch resistance to the Google Glass.
Right.
There were at municipal level. Some kinds of agencies didn't like it. But people generally just felt rather disgusted by it. And
well, some of that was, I think, some people felt a loss of privacy too, because they could be recording you at the same time they're watching other things.
Yeah.
But it's interesting you brought
funny.
that up. I've done a bunch of movie work and stuff too. I like to have my side projects, and a friend of mine that's now passed away that worked on a movie project with me. He was big on the 3D, and he said that was definitely the way we're going to go. And he says they're testing stuff now. And it was funny to me though, because he said the two big things that he knew that were pushing the 3D television was sports and pornography. And he said those are the two big things that people were really pushing to be able to, and he said it just would be three-dimensional and you could walk around it and zoom in on it and see every part. And he said as far as sports, he says it was just phenomenal to be able to, and he saw tests of this and stuff. So there's things out there they are working on that are interesting technology for today. But I mean, there's other ways you can use that too. We could use that also they could use that for surveillance. You know, three-dimensional stuff like that. You could be seeing all around and everything too. So that's other interesting technology that's out there, you know, that they're working on. But I guess that was years ago or a couple of years ago already, he passed away, and he said they've been working on that for years. So I don't know exactly what's happening with that technology, but that's interesting technology.
Yeah, a lot of that augmented reality stuff also came out of DARPA. Jason and DARPA run incubators, and you know, a lot of these slightly more fantastical VR kinds of things, like the Magic Leap, Roni Abramovitz in Miami. You know, just so much of that government developed technology was put into that stuff. It's the AR thing. It is kind of a weird thing to me why people aren't clamoring for this more head-up devices in the form of augmented reality. That is, like, there's something. It's a little cheapo thing, but you can buy it now. It's called Arizon, and it's basically like the Google Cardboard of augmented reality devices. And it's kind of a clunky thing, right? Because it kind of goes up a little bit, but it has this special reflective lens that allows you to put your phone into this thing and have an augmented reality head-up setup. And I would think that people, if they were interested in the functionality of that, a lot more people would be using that. But almost no one really uses uses that sort of thing for $20.
Yeah, I'm surprised too. I used to do a lot of I used to do some pro gaming years ago back, and I would have thought by this time we'd gone that way. But it was interesting. When I like the game, I like the game on computers. But now things have gone mostly to the console, and it's I don't know. I think eventually it's still going to be coming though. I think eventually will. I just think I said there's certain things that people resist. I think, and I don't know what it is with the maybe having the visors on makes people feel vulnerable or something because they don't know what's going on around them or something. I don't know. I've seen some funny little videos where they put them on, one kid put it on his grandmother and she got scared like really bad because she thought something was actually jumping at her and stuff because of it and stuff. So I don't know what the deterrent is about it, but you would have thought that people would have gone to that by now because it's things we thought about and made a big deal about back in the late 90s and the early 2000s, and it's almost 20 years later, and I don't know what there's some sort of resistance, and I'm not sure what it is, but that's the point, that we do have some resistance to technologies, and I'm not sure quite why. I think eventually we will those resistances might come down though. Of course, maybe people have the fear that we'll end up in the Matrix, and maybe that's the resistance. I don't know. Because even Elon Musk made that comment that maybe we are in a virtual reality system and we don't know it. So maybe that's the resistance that people have.
Yeah. It came up in this talk with Kania Sun Tzu, some similar stuff. But I want to go back to the idea of orphan technologies, the idea that the popular resistance to something might prevent us from making use of something that could save a lot of people's lives, could add something to the marketplace and human development in a dramatic way. And this came up as a little bit of bordering on grotesque example, but in the early part of the 20th century, Russian scientists were doing experimentation at a fairly high level for that time, quite a high level for that time, on head transplantation, and the technology did not advance. No one took that research any further.
Well, I know it worked pretty good for me. I don't know what you're talking about, but
don't tell anyone.
But
people will start hearing black helicopter.
Yeah, well, some of that too is because some of the operations they think of as being inhumane and stuff, and because I think they even did some research years ago where they tried to put primate hearts into people. They were working on it. So and there
Thankfully,
are
Sorry, go ahead.
But I was going to say, I do think that there could be lots of technologies out there that are repressed for who knows what reasons. The fact that it seems disgusting, or they're afraid that it makes them feel like they're Frankenstein, or even because of money reasons. I talked about the one car I have right now that does gas and gets 45.7, and it's a miles to gallon, and it's a 4-door car. I remember hearing stories years ago about someone that made a carburetor that supposedly got like 44 miles to a gallon. Everybody said, "Oh, that's not true. That's just a phony story." And the story was that the guy made it, got it patented, and he sold it to a company, and they crushed it. Yeah. And to tell you the truth, today I'm driving a car that gets that kind of mileage. The car I had before it got 39.9 at its best. These aren't subcompact cars. They're getting in the range of, my daughter had a smart car a number of years ago, and these are big cars getting the kind of gas mileage the smart car got. So to me, it makes me feel like I believe that story now, that it was suppressed, that it was a technology that was suppressed. And I think there's other things that are suppressed, and the reasons for that are money. I feel it's money.
Yeah. And so at that point, sorry, please. Oh, no. In that case, it's not an example of the culture not being prepared. It's an example of corporatist catch and kill. And this is whether the extent to which this is true of a water car or this or that. Things of this kind are happening every quarter um, in large organizations, and so this is a critique of a certain kind of market-based capitalism. There's not really an easy, really a good answer to that, except that in a world where we do have more transparency by virtue of higher connectivity, people are now taking these ideas on a crowdsourcing rather than only having the option of just having them bought and crushed by GM or something.
But I think even the big companies can get into that. Yeah,
Yeah.
they can be far-reaching. Even medically, we talked about like statins and stuff, and how I saw some research where people that have died of Alzheimer's and dementia have like 500% less cholesterol in their brain fluid, but yet statins are prescribed to everybody at anything for lowering cholesterol, but yet scientifically we're not sure that lower cholesterol is really is good, and that higher cholesterol is really necessarily bad. But yet, I hate to say it, the drug companies make money off of this. So as far as even medical things, it can become a matter of money and cash flow for businesses. They can suppress things too. And you talk about, what somebody thinks is good or what's bad. The companies can also be putting out bad press, making something that really isn't that bad look horrible, and people go, "Oh my God, that's horrible." Propaganda. So
the sugar industry and food lobbies did this a number of times in the 20th century, quite infamously, deflecting from the failings of their own products by creating panics and other stratagems of this kind. That is, when it has implications for public health specifically, that is quite troubling.
But the point about technology is technology can be used for good and bad in a way. And like you said, crowdsourcing and get it out to people, but yet crowdsourcing can be tampered with by the companies also. And news can be sampled. It can, of course, has always been affected by the companies, but with technology, you can be affected easier. I mean, look at them saying how the Russians were tampering with the election. I mean, but it's not necessarily just the Russians. It can be companies. It can be corporate.
It was mostly
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that we have to all keep working towards it, and that's important. I mean, as long as the people keep pushing towards it, and I hate to say it, but as you get older, you get a little bit more cynical, and I think you do question things more than you did when you were younger. And I think that's good in some ways. I think, I kind of had the view too, sometimes whenever they say it's for your own good, that always worries me. The fact that they feel that they have to tell you it's for your own good is like, well, why do they have to tell me that? Why do they have to tell me so much it's for my good? So that always worries me. But back to this election, I think it's good that we're all out there doing something and trying to push new technology and longevity and a different quality of life, because I think that is a quality of life to try to expand life. And I think I myself, with this campaign and with this candidacy and stuff and the party, I think I'm all about unity. Whatever happens, I'm going to stand behind it and help the party. I think that's what matters. I mean,
me too.
I think we all have to realize that we're working towards a common goal here, and that's the betterment of man and betterment of our lives. So
we are coming to the time that we mentioned. Do you have any other thoughts in parting about some kind of techno-Gaianist or a green futurist philosophy? Other final thoughts on this subject that is so dear to both of us, but with you have such deep history.
I would like us to go as green as possible. I mean, there might be cases, I think, where fossil fuels might still have to be used. They might have to be used as a backup, but I don't think we should use it as a predominant thing. I would hope, I mean, I'm kind of a futurist in a way that I hope man expands out to our neighboring planets and also expands outward. And I would hope that we leave in our wake beauty, not destruction. I hope that we expand outward and we leave the earth, we clean up the earth and we make sure it's beautiful and there's less pollution. And that as we expand through the solar system and the universe, that we are not, like I said before, like termites that infest everything and run on, eat and run on. But I hope that I hope we become the creators and the builders and the designers that we can be. So, and I think us working at cleaning up this planet and stuff is the start of that.
Yeah, and it is an irony that people who talk about going off world and geoengineering of that kind, they seem to have a certain kind of blind spot as to the scale of that kind of civil engineering and broad engineering projects that would entail relative to fixing the problems that we have on Earth, which would not involve completely terraforming, which would be in any way you look at it, lesser projects.
My concern sometimes of terraforming another planet is we're then kind of destroying what's there now, and we're not sure really what's there now. So I would hate for us to terraform a planet and not know that there's some form of life there we didn't know about, and we destroyed that in our wake of terraforming it for ourselves. That's one of my fears. But I would hope that we, in the future, are not seen as destroyers, but are seen as explorers and creators and designers of great things. I don't want us to be seen as, like I said again, destroyers. I don't want to see us be like that.
Yeah.
So I think we have to. I think we've done a lot of destroying. We look a lot for the quick cash, the quick enjoyment, the quick fuel, and that's why I say, with us looking to expand our lifespans, we have to look away from all the quick things and look for the long term. If we're going to live to be over 120, 200, 300, 500, live forever, we have to look towards keeping everything that we hold dear also there for us, not destroying it in our wake. So that's very important. I think the two go hand in hand a lot more than people realize.
Yes. Well, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me, John Kerecz. It's been a pleasure, and I'm an admirer of all that you do, and it's been a pleasure to share this debate field with you.
Well, thank you.
Or this campaign field.
Yeah, well, thank you, and I wish you the best of luck. And like I said, no matter who wins, I'm going to be there for Unity to be behind them. And we'll talk soon.
Yeah. All right. Looking forward to it. All right. Thank you.